Well, here we are on a Friday morning, and isn't it great that we have the company of someone as wise and distinguished as Pat McArt? How are you this morning, Pat? In your
Jude,
palatial surroundings?
hold on while I get my head back down to normal size. Jude, how are you? It's great.
Not too bad
Lovely
at
morning.
all.
Well, it's sort of slightly overcast, but it's lovely.
I
Jeepers,
think,
Jude, the weather this last 3 or 4 days, God, we should be really grateful for it. So,
yes.
as you said yourself before we came on air, it's a bit oppressive. All you feel like doing is sitting at a table drinking a mint julep, but other than that, it's
Well,
grand.
you may have a mint julep, I'll have a beer.
Don't even know what a mint julep is, by the way. That's
Very good,
yeah,
Pat. I do that
yeah.
kind of thing too. I talk about stuff I don't know the meaning of even.
Not a notion, not a damn notion.
Anyway, right, let's get down to business, shall we?
Yes.
Keep these things as short as we can. The first and obvious one is the man who dominated the headlines and was even given an interview by Murray McCallan on RTE, Mr. Edwin Poots, new leader
Yes.
of the DUP. Now, the one thing I noticed that was Paul Given was in tow behind him.
Yeah.
Sort of a youthful version of Prince Philip, so to speak.
Uh,
Not that I'm suggesting that Edwin looks anything remotely like the Queen. But the thing he was complaining about was that animal products and medicines were being blocked. And I think we touched on this before. Maybe if I was in that business, maybe if I was in the job of importing stuff, I'd find the weight of it. But to be honest, it doesn't impact my life at all. What are
no.
your thoughts on that?
No, Jude, well, one other thing you mentioned, I noticed too, Paul giving a song in the sort of the background. So I presume he's there apparent for the next First Minister.
Yes, he's the smiling face of unionism.
Smiling face of unionism. Well, yeah, okay. But so I presume he's the designated one.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, Mark Carruthers on The View last night said they had invited Poots to come on with them, and he refused. But he gave an extensive interview to RTE, which I found sort of okay. But it's a past remarkable thing that he would agree to do an interview with the foreign station in Dublin, but not with his home station and the BBC. There seems to be some sort that the BBC and the DUP still seem to have a sort of edgy relationship.
Well, my suspicion is that he saw the gig in Dublin as being quite different. Here he was, the international statesman, going down and talking and not being afraid to talk to these people and handle their questions and tell them when you didn't approve of. For example, he's made it quite clear he liked Micheál Martin, acceptable man, but he really did not like the previous Taoiseach or Simon Coveney.
Yeah.
I bet they're sitting at home weeping at this very moment.
Yeah, but we're going to go over old territory again. But when unionism sort of says we don't like Simon Coveney and Leo Varadkar, basically what they're saying is these guys did their job for the Republic of Ireland and their negotiations with the EU versus the UK. In other words, they stood up for their country, so that makes them the enemy. And I'd say it's almost a badge of honour for Varadkar and Coveney that the DUP take the attitude they do. Because if the DUP were praising them, I would be asking serious questions.
Yeah. I see where Poots says these things, this is the blockage he maintains of animal products and medicines. These things are entirely unacceptable, he says in the Irish Times. Not for me as a unionist, but for me as a leader of the people of Northern Ireland, because they impact every single person in Northern Ireland. Well, he may or may not be right, but I'll tell you one thing. There were no nationalists out rioting about the protocol. They were exclusively people in loyalist areas. So to say it is impacting people equally, I don't think that's true, frankly.
No, but here he keeps. He used the same script on RT last night as he used on the Andrew Marr show. 15,000 checks coming into Northern Ireland and the port of Rotterdam and about the Eastern European countries. But here's the point: he's been offered, and the British government have been offered a Swiss-style deal, as we said on Monday. They've been offered it, and right away, at a stroke of a pen, 80% of the difficulties would be ameliorated there and then. If they agreed the Swiss style deal. In other words, the EU and the UK would agree to maintain standards on a par, and that's all. And then the other 20% could be worked on and possibly worked out to the satisfaction of both. But Edwin and the British government, now I don't know whether you want to discuss it now, but basically Simon Coveney and various others have said they have let the British government. The British government has gone twice on a solar run, acting unilaterally in regard to an international agreement, done things without even discussing them with their partner. Now, all international agreements are sort of based on a legal framework, and they have broken the legal framework on 2 occasions. And now the EU are sort of saying, you guys have not put up your IT systems, you haven't engaged in a certain thing, and you've unilaterally broken the agreement on 2 occasions, and yet you're actually saying it is our fault. And this is after 4 years of negotiation.
And they've signed an international treaty, as I think Simon Coveney reminds them. I think really the reason that they would be slightly opposed to going and admitting the fact that they've been given an offer of 80% clarification and, the whole thing solved for 80% of them, is that they'd have to follow EU rules.
Yeah.
They'd have to have the standards that EU require. But I mean, that's the whole deal. That's the deal. That's what they've got. I mean, that is the very heart of what those negotiations were about, that the North could be, because it's following the equivalent rules of the EU, is able to trade freely north and south. Now, that's what they agreed to. That's at the heart of it. So this thing about Switzerland is only really emphasizing that and bringing that home in this particular instance. I just don't. I'm struck by the fact that he doesn't seem to ask Boris anything about this. And surely Boris is the man.
Yeah, Jude, it's so hard to get this across. The DUP seem to be hitting at the wrong targets all the time. They're going for the soft targets, basically the Irish government and the EU. Boris Johnson signed this deal. The British signed this deal. Westminster signed this deal. Lord Frost signed this deal. And these are the people. If they are looking to Westminster, they're the people they should be saying, look, you sort this out. But instead of that, they're sort of blaming the Dublin government for standing up for the rights of the people that they represent.
Yeah. And well, Simon Coveney came out said the last 24 hours and said that instead of constantly trying to offer solutions and flexibility, he would remind the UK that there are consequences to not implementing the agreement that have a basis in international law. In other words, Simon Coveney is saying, listen, you're complaining about stuff. You aren't following an international agreement, and there are penalties for that kind of thing. I think I would support him completely in that, not because he's saber rattling, but because I think people respect you more if you stand up and say what you actually believe and the situation that you see it as you see it, not all the time trying to say, oh, well, we understand the problem you're having there and cosseting people. I think Simon Coveney is absolutely right. Say the fact that we've signed an international treaty, and if you don't observe it, we're observing it, but if you don't observe it, then you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, but Jude, it seems to be that there's almost, how do you explain it? The DUP's ability to get it wrong, has been exposed time and time again, and they're getting this one wrong as well. If you go hitting the wrong target, eventually a lot of people just get fed up with it. Their problem is clearly with the British government, the one that they their faith in. Boris Johnson invited and lionized at their conference. He is the one, and I'm repeating myself, I know, but he's the one they should be talking to. And by God, I think a lot of across Europe, they're really getting fed up with the Brits. There's an arrogance there that we can break, we can sign treaties, but just break them willy-nilly, and there's no price to pay. I think that's wearing very thin in Paris and Germany and obviously in Dublin, because Coveney's saying we've had enough of this.
Well, there's two things that I'm keeping in mind here, and I'm wondering what the answer to them is. One is that he went down south. That was well publicized, and the very fact that he did it. Why was that? Was that to show himself as a reasonable man, an international statesman?
Well, no, I would think what he's hoping to do, and now it's only an observation, and is that he's hoping that he can come back and say, look, I have talked to the Irish government. They're going to, they have listened to my concerns. They understand the position I'm in, and they will make an effort to ameliorate the terms and conditions of this protocol. And because I've talked to them, they're willing to do this. And
So
now,
you're going to
because
the bridge between the
and because they're going to be a bridge to EU, and because they have got such a good reception down in Dublin, we can now go north south. Because they're willing to cooperate with us, I'm going to cooperate with them, and I can sell it as a 1-1.
Good point. But at the same time, he's put the boot firmly into Leo Varadkar and Coveney. And
Yeah,
what was the
because
thinking there? Is
they
that
were the
divide
ones
and
that
rule or
refused.
something?
Because hey, by the way, Jude, there's a wonderful thing that people, there's a bit, words have meanings. There's a big difference between warning somebody and threatening somebody. The fact that Leo Varadkar and Simon Coveney showed photographs of burned out custom stations was not a threat, it was a warning. And is anyone seriously saying what they said wasn't going to happen? They said, look, they were warning, look, if there's a hard border on the island of Ireland, this is the sort of thing that can happen. They weren't threatened, they didn't go along and say, by the way, if a hard border is, we're going to make sure this happens. They were sort of saying, look, this is what happened in the past and we don't need this. But if you're a representative of the LCC and you go on and say, and you tell a committee, look, if in the event we don't get our own way, violence can't be taken off the table. I think there's a slight difference in that. One is a threat, the other is a warning.
That's true. The other thing is, of course, that if there is a return to violence by the LCC or whoever, loyalist paramilitaries, it's really going to look bad because it's clear that the EU are totally opposed to it. They're totally in favor of this arrangement they have. And the loyalists, paramilitaries engaging in violence is essentially saying, we hate this so much, we're going to go. They'll have no sympathy whatsoever, either in America or in Europe or in the South. So I have a feeling that they'll be in a bit of a hiding to nothing. I think the deal has been done and what they'll be well advised to try to find ways to make it run more smoothly. And I think Martin has gone about as far as he can go. And I suppose Simon Coveney and company too. They've said, we'll support it. We'll try to make it as reasonable as we can. In Boris's words, we'll try to sandpaper it down and take off the bar.
Whatever that meant.
I'm quite impressed with the fact, two things. One, that he hasn't checked with Boris Johnson. He hasn't gotten communication with Boris Johnson, who signed this agreement. I don't quite get that.
I keep trying to make that point, Jude. He hasn't. I don't think he's had a meeting with Boris Johnson. I don't know what communication he's had with Boris Johnson. I don't even know if he's met Lord Frost and all. If the unions are talking about this, it's the British government. They have to convince to change things.
Right. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. But I suppose it goes down better if they show themselves as not being in opposition or even having to go to the British government, but if they can show that they can put the boot in a bit or that they can handle relationships with the South really well. Did you see that interview between Edwin and Miriam?
No, well, actually, Jude, where I saw it was on The View. They played an extensive clip of it on The View. In fact, they gave about a 5-minute interview.
What do you think about how did you think Edwin handled himself?
I thought he came across, I would say the Southern government or the Southern audience probably said, that's fair enough. He's got a point and he's entitled to make it. I don't think he was particularly outstanding, but he wasn't, but he's not the caricature that some people make him out either.
No,
he came across as fairly reasonable. I didn't have a big problem with what he was saying.
Yeah, and he looked okay. Superficial me, but I thought he looked okay as well. Mind you, I was holding my breath waiting to see what Miriam asked him when last was at confession, but she didn't quite get around to that.
No.
She mentioned the dinosaurs, but I mean, his answer was a good one, actually. He gave a good answer, although... Well, I could go on at length about it, but he did give an answer and say, well, I'm a Christian, and a Christian's got a right to have beliefs, and my beliefs, he didn't want not to say, my beliefs are that
I believe the earth is flat. That doesn't mean I'm right, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I think the DUP, final point on it, I think the DUP are like Humpty Dumpty. At the moment, they are shattered into pieces. The question is, can they, between now and next May, put Humpty Dumpty together again? Do you think it's possible?
No, Jude, I think they're going to fracture even more. Jude, I think you might be
Seriously, do you not
referring.
think events might have occurred, dear boy?
Yeah,
And that might be things.
Jude, there's one thing that's going to, there's only one thing that's going to sort of cement them together again, and they're going to use the big fear of Sinn Féin taking over North and South, and as unionists, that's the big stick they always use to beat the troops back into line with. Right here's Newton Emerson had an article in the Irish Times this morning where he said that roughly unionism is fractured. The DUP, the TUV, the UUP are all somewhere, give or take, between 10 and 15%. You can take a percentage either way, but there's none of them getting anything. There's one party way out in front, 25%, Sinn Féin. So come this time around, before the elections in May of next year, the DUP will probably hold on to the top job, but it's almost certain come after May next year, the top job, in other words, the designated first minister will be Sinn Féin. Now, Jude, like when Arlene Foster is not only resigning as leader of the DUP in another week or two, she's resigning totally from the party. I think there's a councillor in Belfast there recently defected to the UUP. There's a lot of people in the background waiting to see where Poots jumps. And I think there's Paul Bell resigned live on air on The View. Now, if all that's a lot of churn that we know of. What else is going on the ground? Now, if you were a guy, Jude, and the DUP in Fermanagh or South Tyrone, would you go to knock on doors and say, look, I'm here on behalf of Edwin Poots?
No, I don't think, no matter what events occur, well, just about no matter what events occur, I don't think they're going to do very well in Fermanagh, South Tyrone. That really hurt, and Arlene made no secret of the fact. A thought crossed my mind, Pat, a final thought, and then we'll go on to the next one. The DUP is deciding who's going to be First Minister, and it's almost certainly going to be Paul Givan. I'm wondering, and then the Sinn Féin will nominate their First Minister, presumably Michelle O'Neill. Would they ever think of putting somebody else up? Because
who are you referring to? The Sinn Féin?
I mean, is that legally? Is that part of the legal deal? Are they entitled to change their leader?
I think the parties can nominate whoever the hell they like. So I presume Sinn Féin, if they decide Michelle's not up for the job, though I don't see how they're going to come to that conclusion.
Do you think that would be a bad move? For example, supposing John O'Dowd was to replace her,
or Conor Murphy,
or Conor Murphy.
Someone when I just stood up. This shows sort of how my brain works. When I heard that we're going to put Paul Givan and the DUP were putting Paul Givan, I seriously thought, if I was Sinn Féin, I would put Barry Michael Duff on a very simple basis. Paul Givan is as much liked in national circles as Barry Michael Duff is in unionist circles, because I'm not having to go with Barry Michael Duff, by the way. Givan took away a grant to us, West Belfast LEFA grant, apparently 50,000 on the week of Christmas, and then wished them happy Christmas. Barry Michael Duff got on the morning of the anniversary of the King's Multi walked around with a loaf. I think there's almost a degree of provocation putting Paul Givan in as First Minister.
You think so?
I really honestly believe
it. If we go by my superficial criterion of appearance,
again,
he's young, he smiles a lot, and he's a good Christian.
Yeah.
You think you don't think you say that as if
there was something particularly nasty about what he'd done. And it came across to me, and now as sectarian, and whether he meant it that way or not, and I'll give him credit, he sort of said it wasn't. But Jude, he withdraw a grant of 50,000, and he gives, I think the same week he gives 300,000 to a marching band competition. Now you tell me. How that's supposed to come across?
A charming act. Well, I suppose by their fruits, by their deeds shall ye know them. As the Bible.
He's going to say that as a minister and all the rest of it and so on. But a politician has to be a divided society. But how do you think that was going to come across?
Okay. What about this Language Act? Much talk about whether or not Edwin will agree to an Irish Language Act in order to get the show on the road again. And if he doesn't, it might well be that Sinn Féin will say, listen, you guys aren't delivering what you promised. We're not around.
Well, Arlene Foster, which I find, I think you actually mentioned one of your blogs, she is saying that he's duty bound to, because they made an agreement.
This is Mrs. Crocodile.
Mrs. Crocodile, so I find that but she's saying I has to agree it because the agreement some back 18 months, 2 years ago, when they got the assembly up and running again, that was part of the deal.
Do you think he will?
I think he'll have to. I don't
well,
think here's the point. If I was Sinn Féin now, and they'll both have to resign now when Ireland goes, Michelle goes, and to get the thing back up and running. If I was Sinn Féin, I'd say, look, you've dragged your feet on this here. It's to suggest an Irish Language Act as some sort of touchstone for about it's ridiculous. Given an Irish Language Act to people of the culture of the native Irish is not, some sort of ridiculous thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
But listen, it's the thing that Arlene Foster vehemently said she would not give. Now, Edwin is in a situation where is he losing members? Where is he losing support? To the right, to the TUP. Now, if he says okay to an Irish Language Act, won't Jim Allister seize on that? Won't he gobble it up? Won't he say, look at, I told you, new broom, but no, same old story.
But the DUP are going to have to say, sell it as well, right? If we follow Jim Allister, we just follow unionism right over a cliff. We're living in a divided society, right? For signing this, we get an assembly up and running. The constitutional position hasn't changed. We might be able to get deals on the protocol, etc., etc., etc. By the way, if Jim Allister, all the unionists want to follow Jim Allister. Some really, and some the more hardline Republicans I think actually want that to happen on the basis that they know that unionism day is done. Jim seems to think that he can turn back the tide, turn back time, let's go back to 1950s unionism.
Yeah, but Pat, listen, I agree with every word you said, but the fact of the matter is, to my astonishment, actually, the major number of people who are leaving the DUP are not going to Alliance or to the UUP, they're going to Jim Allister. Now, if he adds to that by saying okay to an Irish Language Act, there's going to be even more going to Jim Allister. And now there's a point you reach where you've been bled so much, you become an irrelevance.
Yeah. But the point was, Poots had a putsch against Arlene. Jesus, try saying that.
You practicing that one all night, were you?
But anyway, he led the charge against Arlene, and he now finds himself with the exact same dilemma that she had. And by the way, the reality is, if the DUP do not sign up to an Irish Language Act, Stormont probably doesn't come back.
It's quite a dilemma is in there. My money is on him perhaps agreeing to an Irish Language Act, making sure that there's a counterweight of Ulster Scots in some form or another alongside. Okay, let's leave that. Let's go to another man of substance, another man of right-wing tendencies, shall we say, Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump, as you know, was the king of Twitter, the undisputed world champion of Twitter. So he was blocked from Twitter, and he's out of office and hasn't been seen for a long time. But he may not be seen, but he has been read because he was running a blog, special blog. He's got like myself. He probably got.
Yes.
He might even have got as many readers as I get.
Yes.
But whether or not he has packed it in.
Yeah.
That blog is an ex-blog. It's a dead blog. It's an ex-parrot. So. Why is that? He lost his charm.
I remember when he was the king of Twitter, 90 million followers, and he he didn't govern by diktat and at Parliament in Washington. He governed by Twitter. He made policy on the Twitterscape and so on. And anyway, he was out of office, and apparently he decided that because he had been blocked from the social media companies or platforms, that he was going to launch his own blog, and he launched this thing. And I think it was called From the Desk of Donald J. Trump. And the blog was called The Beacon of Freedom or something like that. And he was expecting that it was going to be, take off like a rocket.
Yeah.
Apparently, it fizzled rather than took off. And
why? Why do you think?
Well, either here's a question for you, Dr. Collins. Is it because he's no longer president of America, or is it because he's losing his attraction, that he's been found out to be an absolute clown, or does it the fact that maybe Twitter, the fact that he's not on Twitter, has actually the influence of social media? Is it far more important than we thought it was?
Well, social media, don't forget, blogs are part of social media.
But not,
I speak as a proprietor of one.
China is responsible for the Wuhan flu, and just throw that out there when you're president of America. Get everybody talking. Try writing a 500-word blog and getting his particular demographic to read it. God bless you.
Well, you see, that's the thing. I think you put a finger on there. Tweets are so easy to read, and you can make a smart remark and bang, you're out of there. And you can rattle off any number without much preparation. But even to do 500 words of a blog, you have to do a wee bit of thinking. And the person who goes to it has to do a wee bit of reading. And, you could say, well, all Trump's followers are numbskulls and they haven't got the brains to read. But the fact is, it appeals to all of us, I think, the shorter thing. Now, people say, oh, that's because of bloody social media and, people's attention span's gone down. I'm not sure that's the case, but I do think that people do like less rather than more. If I look at a book, I've just finished trying to read a book for a book club, A House for Mr. Bizwaz by V.S. Naipaul. And it was something like, on my Kobo, it was something like 2,400 pages. Now, it was a good book, but the very thought of getting through that is sort of demoralizing. So tweets are really so easily digested that I think it could be the form of the thing. I used to once believe that visual was the real key. I used to find, like, when I was working with teachers, that they would, if you give them a handout, a written printed thing, they might read it. And if you ask them to go and read something in the library, a book, they might read it. But if you showed them something on a video, oh yeah, they watch that. And all of us find it easier to watch that. But it doesn't seem, oddly enough, that has quite worked out in social media. Why is it that although we could put up short little videos, the thing that gets people is short little tweets?
Absolutely.
And blogs.
Jude, he referred to people like Crooked Hillary and Sleepy Joe, and like those sort of handles, just smears, and it was, and wee sneers, and it was, and everybody, isn't this great, and so on. He had sort of mastered this sort of immediacy of this medium, and like it kept him, like he dominated the news agenda nearly every day with a tweet.
Well,
but he sort of.
Go ahead. Sorry, Patrick. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, like it was something new, and it was maybe it was after the Americans, they're so conventional and all the rest. Do you have a president who was, even though he was of an older generation, he was the one who was dominating this new medium, and I think maybe that was sort of like a new toy, and it was a great attraction. But maybe the attraction has worn off.
Maybe it's the fact that he isn't president of the United States.
Yeah, well, that also is, I would say, is a big factor.
You see, he was able to bring that authority to these blogs and say, I've got a bigger rocket than a guy in North Korea. So, he had the weight of office behind him, whereas he doesn't have the weight of office now. And people are sort of fed up hearing him say that the election was rigged. But apparently half of Americans still believe the election was rigged.
Yeah, 56% apparently. I was reading the last day.
I mean, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's enough
but
to
what QAnon, QAnon, the people who believe that
Yeah.
Satan is in Washington and has got and is running the government. They have
Yeah.
got something like 15% support, and 15% of Americans believe that and that's on a par with some religious groups.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's wind up now with the last little item. And I said whenever I hear about what the likes of Donald J. Trump is up to, that I feel like weeping. When did you last cry, Pat?
Jesus Christ! I did. You know, I have a soft. The last time I cried,
I should say, Pat, just to interrupt for a second. I should say that you didn't know I was going to ask you that. Okay.
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
No, Jude, I sit and watch now and again. I watch this program called Long Lost Family, and for some reason, it gets me. You know, I know.
Do you actually cry? Do you actually?
I would find no. I would find tears running down, and then I go, but I would find a wee tear running down my cheek.
Really?
And well, a person that's crying, so
that's crying. That's crying. If there's voice that comes out of your eyes.
When you see a son maybe finding a mother after 35 years, or a mother finding somebody, you sort of go, God Almighty. And there is some, Jude, one thing, and I've watched quite a few. I don't know what the attraction for me is. Even when I was in editor of the journal, there was a woman came back from Australia, and she spent 50 years looking for her brother. And like, it was one of the stories that actually got to me. And there was a fella came back from Australia as well, and he found his mother. Now, we got massive reaction. So those sort of stories, human interest stories, have always been and for some reason, that's the sort of thing that sort of gets to me. I don't understand why it gets to me in a way. But when I see some, programs like that. And the first thing everybody says when they see a photograph of their mother or their son for the first time, no matter if they're the ugliest person on earth, the first thing they'll say, "Isn't he beautiful? Isn't she beautiful?"
So is that the only circumstances in which you cry, Pat?
That's no, I rarely.
Would you weep at sad movies? Would you weep at sad movies?
Hey, Sabres, don't ever let me anywhere near you when Field of Dreams comes on. I went to that film and my wife Rosie took me along, and like I didn't know what it was. But there's a thing in all of us. We never see our fathers when as a young man. And there's a scene in that this guy gets the chance to see his father as a young man. And it got me, knowing the way as we see our fathers as authoritarian and whatever, and as sort of symbols of an older generation.
Yeah,
we never get it. And that film, it struck a chord. Was universal.
Did you weep? Did you weep?
Absolutely. Oh, jeepers, hey.
Do you feel ashamed of that in any way? Are you
not in the least. Not in the least. I remember my sisters watching years ago a film called Madam X, and I was wondering why the hell they were crying. In fact, I was looking around them going, are they mentally retarded or something? And it only took me years later when you have your own children and you understood what the whole premise of that particular film was. Jude, I don't know. What about you?
I was going to say, I find the time that I have a slight tendency. If I don't watch myself watching movies, that occasionally I would have a lump in my throat, but never to the point of actually crying. I can't remember doing that. But I'll tell you when I cry, and it's really awful. It's quite embarrassing. I think it's to do with age. When I go to funerals, like I'll give you an example. I went to Francie Brawley's funeral. I knew Francie Brawley, but I didn't know him that well. I remembered him in St. Columns as a young, dark-haired guy and a very pleasant guy. And I met him a few times over the years. But I wouldn't describe myself as a friend of his. I knew his wife could be better than him. But when I went to the church's funeral, I didn't feel like crying. And then at the end of it, people went up and shook hands with the bereaved. Yeah. And I came to the first one of them, and I found a lump in my throat, and I couldn't say a thing. And by the time I got to his wife, I swear to God, I was obviously, I couldn't speak. My face was, I could feel the tears blind me, and my voice thickened, and I couldn't say a word. I found that in several occasions with people with regard to funerals. And I'm not sure why that is. I think it's old age. Old age tends to be a bit sentimental.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't care for Francie Brawley. I think it was a very sad loss, and I'd feel for his wife and everything else.
Mm.
But I felt I was mad at myself for being like that.
Why?
I was supposed to be offering comfort to them, and here I was standing with a big long face with me, and I was going to cry.
But I think someone maybe right, okay, as a guy you knew and you remember, maybe it's a lament for lost youth, but also maybe it's a lament for the passing of human beings, that you'll never see somebody again. You don't necessarily be a good friend. And then of course there's also the thing, it's a sort of a memory of your own mortality, or a reminder of your own, not a memory, a reminder of your own mortality.
Yeah, unlike you, Pat, I detest that in myself. I think it's, you see, everybody, including women, say, oh yeah, of course men should cry, and of course you express your emotion. Don't be bottling it up, and it's not unmanly to cry. Well, yes and no. There's some people cry. You described yourself crying, and you said a tear come down there. Now that's good. That's the way they cry in the movies. But when in real life, in my experience, and certainly when I cry, seriously cry, like there's snot flying all over the place, as well as tears tumbling down my face, and it's not a pretty picture. It's not a pretty picture. As old man. Well, no, I wasn't that.
Jude, can I tell you something? There's one thing you just remember when Barack Obama was going for the presidency for the first time. His mother had died young, and his grandmother had sort of raised him. And in the middle of the campaign, she died, and he was giving a speech somewhere, Jude, I can't remember, but anyway, he started talking about her, and a wee tear just ran down. His voice didn't change, but a wee tear. And I said that day won him the election on a very simple thing, because I'd say every mother in America, black or white, didn't matter. And maybe this is a sort of sexist one, but I would say every woman with a maternal instinct, young, old, in between, and quite a few men, because I was certainly one of them. I felt for him. There was some sort of great humanity in that, and I think, I think it changed the opinion of a lot of Americans, because there was this sort of resistance to a black man. But here was he, a highly intelligent, decent man, talking about somebody he loved, and a wee tear just ran down his face.
Once again, you see, that's that wee tear. He's crying in a dignified way. I think it's all the world of dirty in that. And
you've got to sing about whether it's dignified, whether you cry with snothers and whatever.
Come on, that's not an attractive sight. That's not an attractive.
No, that's true. I agree with that. But
even let's get clear. I don't want people to believe that when I shook hands with Francie Brawley's widow, that I was snottering all over the place. I wasn't, but I couldn't speak, and my face was like that.
Someone said, I think it's a sign of our humanity. I wouldn't. I have no problem. Hey, Jude, I think it's a sign. That's the fact that somebody can cry for somebody. I sort of admire that, and
I admire too.
Because it's a sign that we care. I see these people the psychopaths who care about nobody. God,
but in a restrained way. I just finally come back to one example. The time that John F. Kennedy was killed, his wife never once was shown weeping. But that very fact was great. It won her a lot of plaudits. There was dignity there. Now, she'd start to say, and started crying. Now, you might at first say, well, that's understandable. But she wouldn't have cut us. She really was a figure of great dignity, and your heart would go out to her for the suffering that she'd been confronted with. And I think a part of that was that restraint. I really don't think that women are serious when they say, I think men should be allowed to cry. They don't really want men to cry. They really don't.
Well,
they really don't. Anyway,
Jude, I can't answer that because I really don't know. No, I don't think you want a sniveling wreck in the corner every time something happens. Well, but say, hey, Jude, have you watched a program where a child dies and you can sit and sit there and say, it doesn't affect me, and right? Sometimes when I'm sitting, hey, I know you don't watch it, but I call the midwife on the middle of that. Sometimes they're really sad bits, and so on. And you can find yourself, that's your humanity. Like I would rather have the person who has has no problems expressing their emotions than the one who sits there with a stony face and doesn't, like Stoicism is a great, hey, if you're living about 2,000 years ago in Rome, but we're living in a different era.
Well, yes. I'm still thinking about Jackie Kennedy. I'll give you another quick example. When I did the Martin McGuinness book, one of the people I interviewed, as well as you, was Mary Lou McDonald. And I interviewed her actually in my car because there was nowhere else. So we're at the Culture Land and there was too much noise. So I went out to my car, which was parked outside. And I interviewed her and I was talking to her. And then I said, when I saw you, when you appeared at Martin McGuinness's funeral, you were one of the two people, yourself and Michelle O'Neill were standing one on either side of Jerry Adams. And I noticed, I said, you really looked quite, like Michelle O'Neill looks sad, but you look like a child almost that was about to burst into tears. And she said, well, that's about the size of it. And I was sitting in the car and she didn't, it wasn't the way she said it. She just said, that's about the size of it. And I glanced over at her as she said it, and there was a tear going down her face. Now, she made nothing of it. And when I'm writing those things up, as you know, I sometimes will mention the fact that a person laughs or whatever after.
I saw that.
But I didn't do that with her. I just thought that would have sounded corny if I'd said, as she said this, a tear coming down her face. I thought that would be corny. But I must say that impressed me. I don't accept you're one of these people who can produce tears. There are people, of course, who can produce tears on demand. But I don't think that was the case in this instance. And I think the thing I like most about it, in a way, was the fact that she was able to do it in a dignified way. If she started to go,
but sure, there was a famous, wasn't it, scene of EastEnders where the girl concerned won great plaudits. I think it might have been a Christmas special where I don't know the circumstances, but anyway, in the middle of it, she was supposed to cry, but God, she went the full hog. A big bubble of a snotter come out her nose and whatever, and so on. And they said it was absolute realism. Like all everybody else wanted to do was go and get her hanky.
With that happy image in my head, Pat, I will say thank you very much.
Good luck,
and I'm sure both our listeners are reaching for their hankies.
I'll be going, what's happening to them too? Bye, Jude.
Okay, Pat.